Hey guys, actually I just wanted to mention before we get any further into this video, thank you so much if you've recently just subscribed, because we are at currently 13,349 subscribers. Now the aim was, if you followed us further in the year, to reach about 5,000 subscribers by December 2017, and obviously we've just completely smashed that goal. Those of you who watched our previous video, I'm pretty sure most of you have come from there, so thank you so much for subscribing. So yeah, let's see if we can break 20. That'd be cool by the end of the year. If you did enjoy this video, smash the like button and also subscribe. So this is the video. This is the photo we're going to be trying to achieve today with the color grade. And obviously this is it before, so stick around if you want to see to the end on how to get this photo. So today we're going to be doing a tutorial, much like our last video. It's going to be an Instagram color grading tutorial. Now this is purely educational. I'm not saying go out and just copy the style of this Instagram. I'm just saying if you did want to do an underwater photo like this is roughly how you would go about doing it. So today we're going to be having a look at how we can base our photo on a photo by Jay-Alvarrez. If you don't know who he has got 5.5 million followers on Instagram, and he does a lot of, I guess you could say, life adventure sort of photos. Now, one of the main important things to take into mind when you're taking these photos is to take it in a very similar style to him. Okay, so the photo we're going to be color grading today is this photo. Now you can see it's an underwater photo, very similar to this, but obviously this one's taken a lot deeper, so the skin tones are more greeny blue than in this photo. So we're not going to really have the teal and orange look. We're just going to have a sort of bluey teal underwater look. We are going to try and fix the skin tones a bit here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just head in, import your photo into Lightroom and head on to the develop tab. Now the first thing we're going to do is head to the basic sliders. If you look at his photos, he does have a sort of dark shadows and quite a bit of contrast. So what we're going to do firstly is we're going to bring down the exposure probably to about -1. Now he's also got quite a bit of contrast in his photos. I'm going to bring the contrast up to probably about +10, and I'm going to sort that out later with a clarity slider. Now with the highlights, I'm going to bring the highlights up to about +13. You can see his highlights are quite bright in his photo, almost completely overblown if you look down here. So we are going to bring them up quite a bit. In fact, I may even bring them up possibly to about 25, 30. Then with the shadows, I'm just going to bring the shadows up a bit just so we can see a bit more of the bottom of this image. As for the whites, I'm going to bring the whites up a bit and bring the blacks down. At the moment this is really just adjusting the exposure of the entire image. Now this is a JPEG image, so we're not really going to mess around too much or at all with the temperature and the tint slider. Okay, so the clarity, we're going to bring the clarity up a fair amount, probably to about +50, and also the vibrance down to about -15, and the saturation down as well to about -18. Now the next thing we're going to do is head onto our tone curve, and we're going to click on the 3 spots here, and we're going to make a slight S curve. So we're going to lift up the mid highlights and we're going to drop the mid shadows as well to try and create a bit more contrast. If you do look at his photos, you can't really see, but specifically if you scroll down, he does have particularly faded shadows. So what we are going to do is we're going to lift up the shadows about this much, and we're also going to just try and fade out the highlights slightly as well. Now if you're not able to use this curve, just come down and click this button here. Okay, so now we're going to head on to the Hsl sliders, and really we're just going to be adjusting the aquas, blues and purples in each of the different sections. The aquas we're going to bring down to about -20, the blues we're going to bring down ever so slightly, probably to about -3, and the purples we're going to just bring down. In fact, actually the purples aren't really adjusting this image. Sometimes you'll find it does affect some of the blues. Okay, with the saturation we are going to desaturate this image quite a bit. So we're going to bring the aquas down to about -50, the blues down to about -20, and we're going to leave that as is. Now we're going to head onto the Luminance slider. If we come back onto his images, you can see that his blues up here are quite dark. He's got a lot of tealy dark blues in the shadows. I am going to just try and brighten up the blues a bit just to highlight the rays of sun coming down, and then the aquas I'm also going to bring up as well, just because I feel like it creates a nice effect looking up towards the sun at the top, and you can see his highlights are very bright as well. As for the purples, again, not really going to make much difference. There's no greens in this photo that we can adjust either. Okay, so we're nearing the end of our color grading tutorial. This final slider we're going to work with is the split toning. Now if we head on to his photo, you can see, like I said, he's got a, I guess you could say teal, very slight teal effect in the highlights and also in the shadows. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is we're going to click on Alt, and I'm just going to drag the slider along just to get a colour that I think works. I think we're probably going to leave it at about 185, and I'm going to put the saturation very low on about +5, so you really can't see too much difference that it's made to the image. In fact, I think I may even, so I'm going to put the highlights at 250, that sort of value, 245, and the saturation at +5. Now I like to usually put more of a saturated colour into the shadows, just the way I like to work. And slide this up, and he has a sort of tealy blues in the shadows as well, so we're going to put that value at around 220. We're going to put that on about +13 saturation, so you can see that's the difference that the split toning has made. Now as for detail, I'm going to put on some noise reduction just because I want to make the image a lot softer, because this was taken on a lower quality camera, so you've got quite a bit of noise. So I'm going to put that on +18. I'm also going to bring the sharpening up to about 25, just to bring out the bubbles and the fish. Okay, as for lens corrections, we're just going to leave that alone, and effects, we're going to put a very, very slight vignette on. If you view his image, you can see he's got a vignette at the top corners and a little bit on the bottom corner, so we can do that. We're probably going to bring it down to about -10. I like to bring the feathers about 75% of the way up, and then the highlights all the way up, just to see up here, just to keep those visible. So you can see the vignette has made a little bit of the difference and focuses the attention more on the diver in the middle. The last thing to do is camera calibration before we head on to any of these up here. Now, as I said earlier, he does have a very slight gradual teal and orange look, and the way that's achieved is bringing the blue primary down and the red primary up. Now if you did have some oranges in there, they would be made more of an orange, and the teals, obviously you'd see that teal and orange look more. Now personally, because we don't have any oranges in this image, we're really just not doing an awful lot with this camera calibration slider. I am going to leave that turned off. However, what I would suggest is if you have got some oranges in there, what you could do is just mess around with this until you get a very similar close look, but it's a very gradual effect that you put with this slider on. Okay, so the last few things we're going to do is we're going to head on to the brush tool, and we're going to kind of make the skin tone a bit more orange. So I'm going to bring the temperature slider up to about 20 and the tint slider up to about 16. Now we are going to adjust these in a minute just to make sure they're correct, and all I'm going to do is paint over the skin. I do have auto mask turned on. It does kind of help sometimes just to keep to the thing you're painting around. It kind of predicts where you're painting, and you can see if I turn that off and on, it does make a bit of difference. Now okay, so I'm probably going to bring temperature, like I said, down to about 70, and the tint roughly to about 86. As for the exposure, I'm going to bring up probably 0.2, something like that, just to bring out the diver a bit more, and I'm also going to bring up the shadows as well to about 50%. Now the clarity you can mess around with as you please. I'm going to bring that up to about 57, just because you can see on him he's got a lot of contrast on the diver, or well, at least I think that's him in the photo. So we're also going to bring up the contrast ever so slightly as well, and also the highlights. Now as for the sharpness, I'm going to bring the sharpness up to about 50. Again, if your subject is the largest image in frame, I wouldn't mess around too much with the sharpness because it can look a bit weird. Because this is a lower quality camera, it does look quite nice if you just bring out the sharpness a bit as well. So if we turn off the brush tool, that is the difference it's made, so quite a bit of difference to the final image. Now, having a look at that, I think we are basically done with this overall colour grade. One thing you can mess around with is the graduated filter. You might want to just pull it down at the top and increase the exposure just a bit, and also the saturation, just to kind of give a nice gradient as well to the image, just to bleed it out at the top, because he does have a slightly desaturated blues, so it might be quite nice to do something like that at the top. And this is just kind of adding the last final touches to the image. You can see we've got a very similar look going on. I would say his image is probably slightly more desaturated blues going on. So one thing we can do if we aren't happy with that is just come back into the Hsl slider, and we can bring down the saturation just a touch more in the blues. So you can see, if you look at these blues here and these blues here, we are roughly at a very similar stage of the photo. So if I put this in full screen, this is the photo we have now color graded, and this is the before image. So you can see we've actually done quite a bit. Now what I will say is if you want to use this for future color grades, it's just to come up to presets and you want to just type in jay-alvarrez and you just want to save your preset. Okay, so that is the final color grade. That is what we finished with. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. As I said at the beginning, this is not a direct replica of jay-alvarrez's style, it's just how you would get a similar kind of look, and you can see we've achieved that here while we are including our own sort of styles with the graduated filters at the top and things like that. So don't go out and straight copy someone, but this is how you would do a style like that. Now if there are any other videos or if there are any other Instagrammers you want us to do a tutorial on, don't forget to leave a comment down below. You guys really enjoyed the last video we did, so we're going to try and stick to doing some more of those videos, but we will see you in the next video. Live long and prosper.